Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Wanted to hop on and give you guys some of my takes from what we saw from USC against Notre Dame last night. Wanted to get 24 hours in, wanted to watch the film back, look at some of the numbers, jot down some of my notes, and kind of give you guys my honest takes from what you saw from USC last night. Excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys, and especially the USC fans. The amount of support the USC fans have shown, it's been overwhelming. It's no secret I was extremely high on this USC team. We talked a lot about this USC team, and you guys really showed out. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Best part about doing this, especially with the USC fans, you guys are always giving me your takes, and I love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. I learn a lot from you guys, so let me know whether you're just venting about Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, Alex Grinch, the defense, whatever it is. Would love to hear from you guys. Without further ado, let's get into this. And the first thing I want to start with is just my frustration. And you guys know I've kind of almost become a little bit of a USC fan with how much we've been talking. It was fun to see this offense really just hit those explosive plays. But the frustration I had was the last couple weeks, USC was not playing good football. We hopped on and talked about it at length. And you'd hear Lincoln Riley get up in the press conferences and just say, hey, really happy we were able to get out of this game with the win, and almost seemed like he was content playing below average football and not really holding this USC team to that standard and being okay with just playing their C- C ball against Arizona. It bit him in the butt here because they played that same level, and it is not good enough to go on the road and beat a Notre Dame team that is a legit top 20 team in the country. So it seemed like that content with not playing their best football kind of bled into this one, where you see some other coaches, like if that team doesn't play good, it doesn't matter if they won or lost. He's gonna, like, those top coaches hold their teams accountable for playing their best football, like us versus us kind of mentality. It didn't seem like Lincoln Riley had that kind of energy heading into this game, and I think it kind of caught up to them because they certainly did not play their best football in this one, and they weren't playing their best football heading into it, and it just seemed like they were okay with squeaking out the wins. Now, to get into what I saw from USC against Notre Dame, the first thing you want to talk about is it just seemed like on the offensive side of the ball that they got out schemed. And you're not used to saying this from a Lincoln Riley coach team. How many times have you said Lincoln Riley just got out schemed on the offensive side of the ball? That's what I saw last night. You saw it live. Like, you turn, you're midway through the second quarter, and it said, how many times has USC drawn up a play on offense and it worked? Where it wasn't Caleb Williams extending plays, playing off script, and kind of producing offensive production that way. It wasn't very often. Like, the only real play that comes to mind is you had an end around that kind of worked, and that speed option to Marshawn Lloyd that went for 31 yards and a touchdown. That worked where you out-leveraged the defense. Outside of that, the receivers weren't getting open. They weren't getting schemed open. They weren't creating separation, and it just never seemed like this offense found any sort of rhythm. And I think that kind of falls on, the offense didn't execute, bad blocking up front. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But from a schematic standpoint, that game plan just it wasn't good enough. And you got to give Notre Dame credit. I think they took a lot of things that they got beat by Caleb Williams last year and kind of fixed some of those things. So you got to applaud Notre Dame for that. I thought they played phenomenal on defense. But from USC schematically, the offense just wasn't nearly as clean as we're used to seeing from Lincoln Riley. Second thing, Caleb Williams, and USC fans, I'm sure, agree with this one, was just pressing. And you can't really fault Caleb Williams, right? He needs to play Heisman Trophy caliber ball for this USC team to win, especially in this caliber game, and he didn't. And then when he got off to the bad start, you saw him pressing. And if there was one knock on Caleb Williams that we talked about in the offseason, it was he always is trying to hit the big play. And it wasn't really that much of a knock because when Caleb Williams was trying to make the big play, he normally was making the big plays last year. And even in the first half of this season, last night, he wasn't able to hit the big play, and he was pressing, turning the ball over. And that was kind of the summary of this USC offense. Now, number 3, and this is a big one, and I don't mean to this is certainly not just Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley's fault. Lincoln Riley even said in the presser, like, it was just the whole offense was not making plays. They were all making mistakes. The offensive line, straight up not good enough. And the most disappointing part about it is I was really high in this offensive line coming into the season. Jonah Monheim, I think, is one of the best tackles in the country. Justin Dedich, Emmanuel Pregnon in the portal. From a personnel standpoint, I like this USC offense. They got whipped against Notre Dame last night. And you look at it, Caleb Williams had 37 dropbacks. He was pressured on 15 of them. I mean, it's just it's not good enough when you can't protect the quarterback like USC did. And the worst part about it is this Notre Dame defensive line, although I think it's okay, it's not a dominant defensive line. You're going to see better defensive lines throughout the rest of the schedule. So if you're USC and you're trying to kind of get back to playing that A-plus ball, which when they're playing the A-plus ball, they can hang with any team in the country and beat any team in the country. The offensive line certainly needs to get better. And it was from guys like Justin Dedich, Emmanuel Pregnant, guys who are good football players, just did not play well last night. A couple other things. I mean, Jude Wolfe on the 4th and 1, they were down 3-10. They run a little bit of an option, completely whiffs on the linebacker coming off the edge. And it's just those type of plays when you're making those big of mistakes where they just kill drives and kill plays. It's not going to get the job done against a team like Notre Dame. And you certainly saw that yesterday. Number 4, it was negative plays, and Lincoln Riley mentioned this in the press conference. Partially why maybe USC, and I'm so critical on Lincoln Riley and not being good enough with the play calling, was they were off script a lot of the times, right? There's not in your playbook, when you're writing your game plan, you're not normally game planning for being down like USC was in the first quarter and the first half. And then 2, you're not normally game planning for consistently being in those 3rd and long situations. You only have so many plays in those playbooks for that kind of situation. USC found themselves in that situation far too often. I think it was a result of the lack of the run game. I mean, a lot of negative plays that got him behind the script. And it was just it's really hard to have a good when your playbook is so closed like that. It's really, really hard to have a good offensive schemed up when you're consistently in those 3rd longs, and USC was living in those 3rd and long situations. Last one on the offensive side of the ball, no explosive plays. And this is one of the most explosive offenses that you've seen through the last year and a half with Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. And consistently hitting those 25-plus yard plays, those chunk plays. How many plays did USC from the line of scrimmage on offense have that were over 25 yards? It's 1. The speed option 31-yard touchdown run to Marshawn Lloyd, which again was one of the only plays that I thought was well designed and well scripted. Outside of that, they had a play for 21 and 20. It's just you're used to seeing this USC offense hit those chunk plays and hit those kind of explosive plays to kind of open up games, and it wasn't there. Maybe some credit to USC, but again, USC, if you're going to predicate your team and kind of have the identity of your team being we are going to put up a lot of points and put them up fast and hit those explosive plays, when you don't hit those explosive plays, it's really hard to win on the road against Notre Dame. Now, I want to talk about the defense a little bit, but there's not much to talk about. They were consistently put in bad situations. When you look back at the drive chart, there was only one drive where Notre Dame didn't have a short field and scored a touchdown. Like this USC defense, I'm not saying they played great by any means, but it wasn't. This loss certainly was not on the defensive side of the ball. Now, my only problem with USC was Caleb Williams is going to play like Superman 95% of the time. When he doesn't play like Superman, can that defense and can other people around Caleb Williams pick him up? And USC just hasn't been able to do that. And again, this is USC team last year that forced 2.5 turnovers per game. Wasn't able to force any turnovers today. Hasn't been able to force any turnovers this season. And again, it's a tough ask for this USC defense. But when Caleb doesn't play his best game, can you pick him up, create a negative play, create a turnover, stop him in the red zone? And USC's defense just really wasn't able to do that. Now, again, I'm not blaming this loss on the USC defense by any means, but I was just looking, hey, maybe can they force a negative play and kind of make a play to change the momentum of the game? They just weren't really able to do that. Now, overall thoughts on this USC team heading into the back half of the schedule. You go and play Utah at home. It's a good Utah team that's going to be physical up front. Well, we're going to preview that game later. Lincoln Riley said it, and I'm not going to necessarily pick it and stand up here and tell you guys USC is going to go make the college football playoffs and win a national championship, but I will say this. Lincoln Riley was right in saying this is not a conference loss. You're playing in the best conference in college football right now. If you run the table, win the Pac-12 championship, you're going to the college football playoffs. So is he right saying that all the USC goals are ahead of them? He's absolutely right. And another thing I would add is this team from a talent standpoint, when you still, I mean, I'm not saying Caleb Williams is not the best quarterback in the country because he still is. He's allowed to have one bad game. When you have a quarterback like Caleb Williams, everything is on the table. That being said, if they continue to play like this or anything close to like this, like you saw the last couple of weeks, they're not getting to the Pac-12 championship game. I think Lincoln Riley knows that, and I think the team knows that. And you're going to learn a lot about Lincoln Riley and the culture he's established with how they look against Utah Saturday. Because again, this is the conversation. We can have this conversation now because I've seen it in the comment sections. I've seen it on Twitter. Lincoln Riley, should he be fired? Me personally, I disagree with that. And Lincoln Riley is a really good coach. He's won, 18 out of the 20 games he's played at USC. It seems like USC fans are so quick to forget what Clay Helton had. And I get it. Nobody's more frustrated than Lincoln Riley. Well, I shouldn't say that, but I'm extremely frustrated in Lincoln Riley. Like, trust me, this was a team that was not playing their best ball. He seemed content with it, and they came out and they were flat. Like, I am very frustrated with how Lincoln Riley has managed this team from an outsider's perspective the last couple of weeks. That being said, you got to give him time to continue to build. It's a year and a half. He took you to the Pac-12 championship game last year. You're undefeated in the conference right now. This was an embarrassing loss. It was a horrible loss. But to want to get rid of Lincoln Riley, and to me, it doesn't really make any sense. I think he's still the right coach, but you are going to learn a lot about Lincoln Riley and what he has established from a culture standpoint within this team in the next week when they play Utah. Excited for that game. Excited for this team again. Like, they're always fun to watch. This was a really frustrating game. Some of these, if they clean some of these things up, like this still can be a very good college football team. But they got to clean some of that stuff up, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Again, I wanted to hop on. I didn't want to take too much time. Give you guys some of my thoughts. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.